The night Marcus flew back to Atlanta, he did not call ahead. He had been gone for 3 years. 3 years in London, first finishing his residency at King's College Hospital, then building the kind of surgical career that people back home talked about at church on Sunday mornings. 3 years of 12-hour shifts and cold apartments and video calls that cut out at the worst moments. 3 years of missing Amara. He told himself the silence was a gift. He wanted to see her face when she opened the door. He wanted to watch her eyes go wide before she had time to compose herself. That was the real her. The Amara who laughed before she thought to cover her mouth, who cried at commercials and pretended she wasn't. He had been holding that image in his chest like something fragile the entire flight home. The cab from Hartsfield-Jackson took 40 minutes in evening traffic. Marcus sat in the back with his carry-on between his knees and watched the city lights blur past the window. Atlanta looked the same and different the way a childhood home always does, familiar enough to ache, changed enough to unsettle. He pressed his thumb against the inside of his ring finger. The ring was in his jacket pocket, a simple gold band with a small diamond that he had bought in a jewelry shop near Victoria Station 6 months ago, and had been carrying ever since, waiting for this exact night. He had the whole thing planned. Knock on the door of the house she shared with her mother, Mama Celia. Let her open it. Get down on one knee right there on the porch under the yellow light. He had even rehearsed what he would say, lying awake in his London flat at 2 in the morning with the rain tapping against the window. But when the cab pulled down her street and Marcus looked toward the house, the porch light was off. The windows were dark. There was no car in the driveway. Not Mama Celia's old Buick, not anything. He paid the driver and stood on the sidewalk for a moment, just looking. Something quiet and uncertain moved through him. He told himself they were probably out. He told himself there was a reasonable explanation. He did not let himself think anything else. He called Amara's number. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. Her voice, the old recording she had never changed, telling him to leave a message. He did not leave one. He called again. Same thing. He stood there in the dark for another minute, then picked up his bag and walked to the corner store 2 blocks away, bought a bottle of water he did not want, and tried to think. Marcus had met Amara at Spelman 8 years ago, at a study group for organic chemistry that neither of them had wanted to attend. She had shown up 20 minutes late with her hair still damp, dropped her backpack on the table with a thud that made everyone look up, and said, without any embarrassment at all, "Sorry, the bus driver took the long way for no reason." He had laughed. She had looked at him like she was deciding whether to be annoyed, and then she had laughed too, and that was essentially it. That was how it started. She was pre-law then, the first in her family to go to college, putting herself through school on a scholarship and 2 part-time jobs. He was pre-med, the son of a cardiologist from Decatur, which Amara teased him about exactly once before deciding she did not care. What she cared about was whether a person showed up, whether they meant what they said, whether they were real. Marcus tried very hard, from the beginning, to be real with her. They dated for 2 years before he matched into his residency program in London. He remembered the night, he told her. They were sitting in her mother's kitchen, Mama Celia somewhere in the back of the house watching her evening shows, the smell of rice and stew still hanging in the air. He had put the acceptance letter on the table between them and watched Amara read it. She did not say anything for a long time. Then she folded the letter carefully along its original crease and slid it back across the table to him. "How long?" she asked. 3 years. Maybe a little more. She nodded slowly. He could see her working through it, the way she always did, quietly, without drama, processing things inside herself before she let them out. "I'm not going to ask you not to go," she said finally. "That's not who I want to be, Amara, but I need you to be honest with me." She looked at him directly, the way she always did when something mattered. "Is this it? Are we? Is this the end of something?" He had reached across the table and taken both her hands. "No," he said. "This is not the end of anything. I'm coming back. I'm coming back for you. That's a promise." She had held his gaze for a long moment, reading him the way she always could. Then she squeezed his hands and said quietly, "Okay." That was the last real conversation they had about it. She drove him to the airport, She hugged him for a long time at the departure gate. She did not cry until she thought he couldn't see her anymore, but he looked back once and saw her standing there with her hand pressed against her mouth. He carried that image across the Atlantic. The first year, they talked almost every day. Video calls, voice messages, long texts sent at strange hours because of the time difference. She was working at a downtown law firm as a paralegal, saving money, studying for the LSAT on weekends. Mama Celia's blood pressure had been acting up, but the doctors said it was manageable. Things were hard, but okay. They were okay. The second year, the calls became less frequent, not because of anything said, but because of everything unsaid. The weight of distance, the way life fills the spaces a person leaves behind. Amara got quieter on the calls. He got busier at the hospital. There were weeks where they went 5 or 6 days without speaking, and when they did speak, it was shorter, lighter, skimming the surface of things. He told himself it was just the rhythm of long distance, that it didn't mean anything. The third year, Amara stopped bringing up the future. She used to talk about it. When you come back, when we find a place, when things settle down. That stopped somewhere around month 8 of year 3. He noticed it, but did not push. He was deep in a demanding surgical rotation. He told himself they would talk properly when he was home. He told himself a lot of things. The morning after he arrived in Atlanta, Marcus drove to the house again. It was early, just past 7, and this time Mama Celia's Buick was in the driveway. He knocked. Mama Celia answered the door in her housecoat, and the look on her face when she saw him was not the look he expected. It was not surprise. It was something more careful than that. "Marcus," she said. Her voice was warm but measured. "Baby, you're home?" "Yes, ma'am." He glanced past her into the house. "Is Amara here?" A pause. Brief, but he caught it. "Come inside," Mama Celia said. "Let me put on some coffee." He sat at the same kitchen table where he had told Amara about London, and he watched Mama Celia move around the kitchen with the deliberate slowness of a woman buying herself time to think. She poured water into the coffee maker. She got 2 mugs from the cabinet. She straightened a dish towel that didn't need straightening. "Where is she?" Marcus asked. Mama Celia sat down across from him. She folded her hands on the table. The same gesture Amara made when she was being careful with her words. "She's working," Mama Celia said. "This early. She works early shifts now." She looked at him steadily. "Marcus, a lot has changed. I need you to understand that before you go looking for her." He felt something cold move through his chest. "What happened?" Mama Celia was quiet for a moment. Then she began. "About 14 months ago, Mama Celia had a stroke. Not a massive one, but serious enough. She had been in the hospital for 3 weeks, then in a rehabilitation facility for 2 months after that. Amara had taken family medical leave from the law firm to care for her, which was the right thing to do, the only thing to do. But when she tried to return to her position, she found that it had been restructured. The firm had promoted internally. There was no longer a place for her. She had looked for other paralegal work, but Atlanta's legal market was tighter than it looked from the outside, and her LSAT studying had fallen away during the months of hospital visits and insurance calls and Mama Celia's physical therapy appointments. She had burned through her savings faster than she expected. Medical bills have a way of doing that. She had taken the first job she was offered that paid weekly. A hotel downtown. Housekeeping. "She's been there for 7 months, Mama Celia said. She said it plainly, without apology, the way a woman says something she has made her peace with, even if the peace was hard to come by. Marcus sat very still. "Why didn't she tell me?" he asked. Mama Celia looked at him for a moment before answering. "You know why, Marcus?" He did know. He knew exactly why. Because Amara did not want to be a burden. Because she had spent her whole life handling things herself, being the person who did not need rescuing, and the idea of calling the man she loved, the man who was becoming a surgeon in London, to say, "I'm cleaning hotel rooms and I don't know how to fix this," that would have felt, to Amara, like a kind of failure she couldn't afford to name out loud. He put his face in his hands. "She didn't stop loving you," Mama Celia said quietly. "That girl never stopped. She just didn't know how to hold all of it at the same time." The Meridian Hotel was a mid-range property near Peachtree Center, the kind of place that catered to business travelers and convention groups. Marcus sat in the lobby for 20 minutes before he saw her. He almost didn't recognize her, which was the thing that hit him hardest later, when he had time to sit with it. She was in uniform. Grey polo, dark slacks, her hair pulled back tight, pushing a housekeeping cart around the corner from the elevators. Her head was down. She was checking something on a clipboard. He stood up. She hadn't seen him yet. She was reading whatever was on the clipboard, her lips moving slightly the way they always did when she was concentrating, a habit she had from studying, from always taking things seriously, even when she was tired. He watched her for a moment. 3 years. She was thinner than he remembered, and there was a tiredness around her eyes that hadn't been there before. But she was still her. The set of her jaw, the way she held herself, that particular quality of stillness she had that always made a room feel calmer. He took a step toward her. She looked up. The clipboard fell. It hit the polished floor with a sound that made the front desk clerk look over, and Amara stood there staring at Marcus like she was trying to decide if he was real. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. "Amara," he said. "Marcus." It was barely a sound, just his name, just breath. He crossed the lobby in 5 steps and she met him halfway, and when he put his arms around her, she went very still for 1 second. And then she made a sound he had never heard from her before, something broken and relieved and ashamed all at once, and she gripped the back of his jacket with both hands like she was afraid he would disappear. He held on. "I've got you," he said into her hair. "I've got you. I'm here." She pulled back after a moment, wiping her eyes quickly with her palm, looking away from the front desk. The professional reflex kicking in, even now. Don't fall apart at work. He recognized the impulse. He had the same one. "You can't be here," she said. "Marcus, I'm working. I know." He kept his hands on her shoulders. "I know. I just need to know one thing first." She looked at him warily. Her eyes were red. "What? Were you ever going to tell me?" She looked down. A long silence. "I didn't know how," she said finally. Her voice was very quiet. "I didn't know how to say it. You were there building this incredible career, and I kept thinking I would fix it first. That I would figure it out, and then by the time you came home, it would just be something that happened. Past tense. Not something you had to." She stopped. "I didn't want you to come back out of pity." "Pity," he repeated. "Yes." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and took out the small velvet box and held it between them. Amara stared at it. "I bought this 6 months ago," Marcus said. "In London. I've been carrying it since October." He opened the box. The ring caught the lobby light. "I had a whole plan. I was going to come to your mother's house and knock on the door and get down on one knee on the porch." He paused. "This is not exactly what I planned." She let out something that was halfway between a laugh and a sob. "Marcus, I did not come back because I pitied you," he said. His voice was steady. "I came back because I kept a promise, and I need you to understand that nothing I saw today, nothing your mama told me, nothing about any of this, changes a single thing about why I'm standing here." She was crying again, quietly, trying not to be seen doing it. "You're not going to do this in the middle of the Meridian Hotel lobby," she whispered. "I will absolutely do this in the middle of the Meridian Hotel lobby," he said, and he got down on one knee on the polished floor. Someone at the front desk said, "Oh my goodness," loud enough to be heard. A man coming out of the elevator stopped walking. Amara put both hands over her mouth. "Amara," Marcus said, looking up at her. "I love you. I have loved you since a study group neither of us wanted to go to. I loved you every day I was in London, every long shift. Every night I was too tired to call, but not too tired to miss you. I love you right now, in this lobby, in this moment, exactly as things are." He held the ring up. "Will you marry me?" She was shaking her head slowly, but it wasn't a no. He knew her well enough to know that it was the thing she did when something was too big to immediately contain. "Yes," she said. Her voice cracked on the word. "Yes. Obviously, yes." He stood up and put the ring on her finger, and she threw her arms around his neck, and he lifted her slightly off the ground the way he used to, and the man from the elevator started clapping, and the front desk clerk said, "That's so sweet," and then immediately looked back at her computer screen. They sat in Mama Celia's kitchen that evening, all 3 of them around the same table, and Amara finally talked. Really talked, the way she hadn't been able to for a long time. She told him everything. The phone call from the hospital about her mother, the long nights in the waiting room, The way the firm had let her go, with a handshake and a form letter, the months of resumes and rejections, the moment she had taken the housekeeping job and cried in her car for 20 minutes before going inside for orientation. She told him she had almost called him 100 times, that she had drafted messages and deleted them, that there had been one night in January, after a particularly brutal week, when she had sat on the edge of her bed and stared at his contact in her phone for so long the screen went dark. "Why didn't you?" he asked. She thought about it. "I think I was scared," she said, "that you'd come back and everything would be different and I'd be the reason it was different. I didn't want to be something you had to fix." Marcus looked at her for a moment. Then he looked at Mama Celia, who was quietly eating her rice and giving the impression of someone who was not listening even though she was. "Amara," he said, "you were never something I had to fix. You were always someone I wanted to come home to." Mama Celia put her fork down and pressed her hand over her mouth and looked at the wall. "Mama," Amara said. "I'm fine," Mama Celia said. "I'm absolutely fine. Keep talking." In the weeks that followed, things moved the way things move when two people stop waiting and start building. Marcus began the credentialing process to practice surgery in Georgia. He found them a small apartment in Decatur, not far from his parents, close enough to Mama Celia that Amara could check on her easily. He told Amara she did not have to stay at the hotel, that they had enough to breathe while she figured out the next step. But she finished her 2 weeks' notice anyway, because that was who she was, because she did not walk away from things without closing them properly. She started studying for the LSAT again. She studied at the kitchen table in the early mornings before Marcus was up, with a cup of coffee and the kind of focused quiet he had always admired in her. He started leaving her a fresh cup on the counter before he went back to sleep. It became a thing, just a small, daily, ordinary thing. But those are the things that hold a life together. The wedding was set for the following spring. Simple, at a church in Decatur, where Mama Celia had been a member for 30 years. Amara said she did not want anything extravagant. She wanted flowers she could name, and people she actually knew, and food that tasted like something her mother would make. That was what she got. On the morning of the wedding, Marcus stood at the front of the church and watched the doors at the back open, and Amara walked in on Mama Celia's arm. Mama Celia, who had said she was not going to cry, who was absolutely crying, and Amara was wearing a dress the color of ivory, and her hair was down the way he liked it, and she was looking at him with that look she had, that steady, unguarded, completely real look, and Marcus felt the full weight of the last 3 years settle and then lift. He had carried a ring across an ocean. He had knelt on a hotel lobby floor. He had kept a promise in the only way that counted, not with words spoken in a kitchen years ago, but with showing up, with choosing her again, after everything. She reached the front of the church and Mama Celia placed her hand in his, and Mama Celia said, very quietly, just for the 3 of them, "Take care of my girl." "Yes, ma'am," Marcus said. "I will." Amara squeezed his hand and looked up at him and smiled, the real one, the one she had before she thought to cover her mouth. And Marcus thought that some things, the real things, were worth every mile of the distance between them. The minister began to speak, and outside the church the Atlanta morning was warm and bright, and full of the particular light that only comes in spring, when everything that survived the winter finally remembers what it was supposed to do.